Hey everybody, it's Eugene Leisure here and welcome to Click 3D. This is the program where we talk about photogrammetry and how you can use your digital camera or drone to create really great 3D models. Now I also talk about laser scanning, structured light scanners and other things too, but for today we're definitely going to be talking about photogrammetry. So there was an interesting question that somebody had, and I think a lot of people ask themselves this same question, especially when they're flying with drones, and that is, how high should you fly? And I guess the answer really depends on what it is that you're trying to capture. So if you're doing something like a crash scene or a roadway or something like that, well, it really comes down to what is the level of detail that you need when you're capturing that particular roadway. Now, if it's just to get, a long stretch of roadway or a parking lot or a building or something like that, well, it really comes down to just those fine little details. And those will define, how close that you need to get. So today what I thought we would do is come up with just a little experiment, and I'm just going to be using the DJI Mavic Mini. Easy drone to fly, a lot of fun too, but this has a 12 megapixel camera, so it's not a high resolution camera. It's a fixed focal length, so I can't zoom in, I can't zoom out, and all these factors are going to make a difference depending on the type of drone that you have. So really simple drone, 12 megapixel camera, and what I'm planning to do is I'm just going to pick an area where I can spread out some targets. So let me show you those. They're just right here. So these are a series of checkered targets, and what I'm going to do is just lie these flat on the ground, and then from up top I should be able to capture 3-4 of these, and so I've got some back here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to step it up in height, so I'm going to move up in altitude. So maybe I'll start at something like 10 meters or something like that, and then I'll move up to a new height, and then I'll take a series of images that will help to reconstruct the parking lot or the area. I'm going to work in a parking lot here today, and then from there I may even go higher and kind of go from there. So afterwards, I'm going to process these in photogrammetry software, and I'm going to process them each group. So I'm going to start with the lowest one, so the one that has the greatest detail, then I'll do the mid, and then I'll do the higher one. And I'm not really sure exactly what height I'm going to fly at, but we could even combine all three sets in the end and then see what effect that has on the final result. So that's kind of the plan. I just need to find a good spot here, and then what I'm going to be doing is laying out the checkered targets. Then I'm going to prepare. I'll film myself, flying. I may even take some video of the overall parking lot just so you guys get a sense of what I'm going to be doing here. And that's it. After we'll use 3ds Zephyr, we'll process it, and let's just see what we get. So let me get to it. Okay, so I think I found the area that I'm going to be working with here. It's just a wide open parking lot, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these targets and I'm going to put them down maybe in some of the corners or some different places, and I'll have 4 of them, so I'll just spread them out and then we'll fly it and we will photograph them. Now again, this is about 50 meters or so, something like that, and these are 2 foot by 2 foot fiberboard things here, and what I've got are dark gray checkered targets, and then I've got a white background on it. Now if this was for a laser scanner, I keep them dark gray because that's what I was using these for, but if it was for photogrammetry I probably would have made these black, a nice dark black, but these should work just fine. It's kind of warm today, it's really sunny, but this should work okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set these up and just kind of spread them out across here, and then we'll get to it and just fly the drone maybe at about 10 meters, then I'm thinking 20, and then maybe 40. I'm not going to go really high because over this small distance, if I get up to 90, 100 meters, then it's not going to take that many photos. So as you can imagine, if you're really close to the ground, you have a small field of view, you're going to be taking a lot more photographs, and then as you get higher, you get a wider field of view, so you'll be taking fewer and fewer photographs. So that's kind of one way to kind of balance the efficiency when you're flying the drone, and to think about how high can I go to kind of capture everything, and then how close do I need to be to the to get the details. Now, of course, I'm not talking about any of the drone laws, depending on where you live or whatever, how high you can fly in certain areas. So this is irrespective of that. And of course, you should just check your local regulations and figure out, you know, what limits there are on how high you can fly. But typically, if you're doing photogrammetry, especially for crime scene or crash scene reconstruction, you're not going to be flying at a very, very high altitude. You're going to be at a reasonable height. And some of the previous studies that we've done, we've flown at like 20, 40, and 60 meters above the ground, and that seems to be reasonable. And again, you just choose the height you need depending on what it is that you're trying to get at. Okay, I'm going to get busy here, and then I'm going to lay these out on the ground. Okay, so targets are laid out. Let's get the drone, let's fire it up, and let's take some pictures. Okay, so I'm at a height of 10 meters now, and I'm gonna just move back here. Actually, I'm probably gonna go on the other side because the sun is kind of like right in my eyes, and I wanna make sure that I keep this in view here. So let me go back here, but I'll start taking photos of the parking lot and see what that gives us. So again, yeah, it looks like we're holding at 10 meters, and I'm just gonna start, make sure that I'm good on the photographs. Yeah, definitely photos. Let me just make sure that I'm getting this, photos are set up properly. So I think I'm okay. All right, there we go. And I'm gonna come back a bit more. I'm gonna overshoot this a bit. Now I'm just gonna fly manually. I'm not going to, I'm not going to do anything automatic here. So I'm not really concerned with the number of photos. I'm more concerned with just how high I'm flying. So I'm gonna try and keep this at 10 meters as best as I can. There we go. So it looks like I'm getting these looking pretty good. All right. Okay, so I just did the first set at about 10 meters. that whole way, and it took a bunch of photos. Obviously I'm closer, so I don't have the same type of field of view, or I can't capture as much. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring this guy back here. We're going to start over and we're going to go up to 20 meters, and I might be even able to do this all just in sort of one shot, but I may do a couple of overlapping series. I think that probably makes sense. So let me get to it. Okay, I'm at 30. I think what I'll do is I'll stick with 30. I'm just going to go down a little bit and I'll work with it there. So I'm at 30 right now. Lots of a really wide area that I'm picking up here. So I'm just going to get going here, take a few photos. And I got just one row of this, should be fine. Maybe I'll do another set coming back, but I'm picking up a ton of area here, so no problem. All right, that's 30. Let's go up to 40. Okay, we've hit 40. Really wide field of view here, so let's do one of these. All right, you can hear the alarm here. So I just hit 40, took my last photo, so I'm bringing this down and we're gonna be good to go. I still got 5 minutes, but I'll be okay. And the sun is right in my eyes. One of the terrible things of flying a drone, always staring at the sun. All right, well that's done now, so we're gonna process these and see what the heck we got here. See you in a bit. Okay, well, I'm back at my computer here, and it took a little bit of time to organize all of the files and video and such like that. So, but I think I got it all squared away. Now, one thing that did happen was I missed out on some photos on the 10-meter flight, and the reason was somebody actually pulled up and started talking to me and stuff like that. So, I fell a little bit short on the photos. So I should have taken more photos. I don't have as many as I want, but that's okay. It'll still work out, and I think it'll still give us what we need to do here. Now, before I jump in and start doing the photogrammetry part or whatever, I want to inspect at least one image from each altitude or each height, and just to kind of give a sense of the kinds of pixels or the size of those targets that that we're using in the parking lot there, and that might give us an indication as to how well this might reconstruct. So let me start with one here. Oh, let me see. I'm gonna have to flip through some of these just to get to where I need to be. Okay, so there we go. This is the 10-meter flight. These are one of the images, and here you can see one of the targets. So at this distance, it looks really good. So I'm just gonna go in here, zoom in. Okay, so that gives you an idea of what the target looks like, and here we can make out the center or the corners of the two targets quite well. So one thing that I can do is I hit F12 here. There's a measurement tool. This is a program called View, and if I measure across this 2-foot distance just across the target, okay, it's telling me it's about 155 pixels. So right about here, it says 155 pixels. So I'm going to write that down actually and just keep note of that. So at the 10 meters, we've got about 155 pixels for a 2-foot by 2-foot target, right? So not bad. Let's look at another image, and we're going to go into the 20 meter. And let me see what this looks like. Okay, so this is the start. If I flip through some of the images, you can look here, see what 20 meters looks like. Right, definitely a little bit further back, but still looks pretty good, right? We got some good imagery here. Now let's go back on that same target. Okay, so it's not too bad, right? We can still make out the center point here, the target, but let's do the same thing and take a measurement here. So I'm going to go to the measure tool, and this time I'm going to go across just more or less like right here. Okay. So now we're at about 83 pixels. So let me write that one down. At about 20 meters, we're at about 83 pixels. So we have pretty much come down almost by half, which makes sense because we basically doubled the height, and it should be a linear relationship. So if we go up to 30, let me bring up one of the 30 images here. Okay, let me flip through some of these just to give you an idea. I mean, the photos look pretty good. We had a really good day. It was warm, actually a little hot outside, but the ground is really, really well lit up here. So that's great. Let's go in on this one, same target like that. And you can see starting to become really pixelated, still seeing that particular target. And let me bring up the measure tool here. And I'm just going to measure something like this. Let's say that looks pretty good to me, more or less. Okay. And now we're getting down to about 58 pixels. So let me write that down. 30 meters, we're at about 58 pixels. Okay, that's not too bad. And I'll click OK there and close that one. And let's do our last one. Let's do the 40 meters. And let me bring up the images. Okay, and this will give you an idea of what we've got going on here. So these are the targets. You see really, we're seeing a lot of, the field of view is great here. So as we go forward, I didn't need to take as many pictures, but, I did it this way manually, no big deal. And that's the 40. Now let's zoom in on this again. Really, really pixelated now. Still not bad. I mean, we can still kind of make out the center of the target, I think. So that's pretty good. And let's do the measure tool here. Let's say about here to about here. Okay. And now we're down to about 45 pixels. So 40 meters, 45 pixels. So again, this is a 2-foot by 2-foot target. At 10 meters, we had 155 pixels. At 20 meters, we had 83 pixels. At 30 meters, we had about 58 pixels. And at 40 meters, we have about 45 pixels. So at some point, we're obviously going to be too far from this target in order to really make out the center really well. So if, this is 40 meters, if we were up at about, if we double that at 80, we're probably only going to get about 20 pixels. And again, once we start getting up to about, 120 or something like that, this target is pretty much going to disappear. It's just going to get really small and very hard to distinguish where that center point is. So for the purposes of what we did, I think going up to about 40 meters, maybe we could have gone to 60, would be okay using this type of target. So, if you're georeferencing something, or if you're going to be using different types of targets, it just goes to show you that depending on the size of your target, or how well you can discern where it is, then this is important information to know and a good test to use with your specific drone and the specific lens that you have. Okay, well, that's it for the images. I'm going to go back to 3D Zephyr, and we are going to start from the 10 meter height, and we are going to process all these images. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this in. I'm going to go next, and I'm going to be flying through this just to kind of show you what I've got. This is aerial default here. So we've got a series of images here, GPS, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit run, and then once it's done, I'll come back to this. Okay, so it's done. Looking good. Everything came together. You can see I've got pretty good point cloud here. Now what I'm going to do is actually just run the dense point cloud, and I'm going to run it fairly dense. Should I do high details? Let me think. Yeah, I'm going to do high details in this case because I want to see how well we can rectify the targets just in the dense point cloud. Now I could actually go in and make a textured image, but let's just see how deep of a point cloud we can get and sort of how clear it might be. And then what I'll do is I'll actually run separate instances of 3ds Zephyr. So hopefully I can get 4 different instances working and 4 different projects so I can kind of flip between them. So I'll be back when this is done, and then we'll check and see what it looks like. Okay, so it says we've got a dense point cloud. So here we have it. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Now you can see some of where these things it didn't reconstruct really well, probably because it was just too plain. So this was the one end. So I may have no choice but to turn this into a mesh and then see how it textures. So let me do that. And I think what happens is just because it's just white, it couldn't really resolve the target. But if you make this into a mesh, or if I make it a ground control point, then I can actually pick it from the image. But let's just do a textured mesh and go from there. So I don't need a really fancy mesh. I'll just use the defaults going forward, and just use the default. And then once we do the textured mesh, we'll see what it looks like. Okay, the mesh is complete, and okay, looks like it's filled this little space here. No problem. It's trying to fill the sides of the mesh here too, so we don't need that. But let's go ahead and just make a textured mesh, and we'll see what the target looks like as we texture it. So we'll do that. Go ahead and just use, actually we're going to do the high details to get as much as we can, and we'll see what it says. Okay, we have a textured mesh here, and okay, that looks much better. So let's just have a look at one of these. And okay, so there's a little bit of wobble in the mesh. It didn't reconstruct all that well, probably because of just the white part caused a little bit of a problem. So breaking this texture up a little bit more might have been a little bit better. So, but you can see that the texture itself is actually quite good. It's not too bad at all. So this is looking pretty good. Okay, so if we look at the texture here, you can see that it's looking pretty good. It's fairly crisp. In some cases, a little bit of wobbliness. Maybe I have to fix some of that, but it looks quite good, and that's because we're just down low enough. And so, you can see here, we can make up the squares, and it's looking pretty good here. So that's not too bad. And if we get into some of the images, if we wanted to make like ground control points, we can pick different images that have some of these in. Let me go down to the end. So something like this. So if we went down in here, This is just the image, and it would be relatively easy to pick a control point here. So that's not too bad. So between the mesh and between the photos, we can pretty much tell that it's looking pretty good. Okay, let's do another one. We're going to do another instance of 3ds Zephyr. Let's see if I can get this to work with several of them at once. And we're going to do the 20 meter set, and I'm just going to put this in here. That's a new one, and we're just going to do the exact same thing over again. So I'm going to go ahead and go next. This time I'm actually not going to do dense. I am going to do aerial default and let this run. So when the sparse point cloud is ready, then I'll come back and I'll have a look. All right, the sparse point cloud is all done. All the images came in together. This is the 20 meter height. Okay, and what we're going to do is just create a simple dense cloud so that we can, I'm going to go default, and that'll run faster. And then once that's, I'm just going to create a regular mesh and then texture the mesh, because really what we're after is the quality of the texture, at least for my part, because that'll tell me how much detail I can get out of the images. And you kind of get an indication of that from what I actually just showed you, but I guess it's a good idea to see the actual reconstruction and then kind of go from there. Yeah, let this do its thing, and then I'll be right back. And the dense point cloud is done. Great. Okay, you can see definitely a much wider area. We have our targets here and there. So now we're just going to go ahead and do the mesh. Let's go do that. And we're going to do aerial and default. And then we'll jump right into the texture and just see what that looks like. And we're back. This is the mesh. Okay, so now we just got to do the texture. And we're going to do a nice high detail texture to see what that looks like. And once that's done, then I'll be right back and we'll inspect that textured mesh. Once again, back, and let me hit finish. And now let's see what we've got. So if I move into this one over here, okay, that's what we've got. So not too bad. Yeah, that gives you a sense of the quality of what you're getting. So now let's go and let's try the 30. So I'm going to open up again another instance of 3ds Zephyr. And once that fires up, I'm going to slide it into this window. And let me get into these 30 meter images here. And once again, I'm just going to rinse and repeat the process and get this going. And I'm just going to make this aerial. Great. I'm going to go ahead next, and I'm going to go run. Back in a bit. All right, everything reconstructed here, which is great. And I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did before. Now we're starting to get the tops of the building simply because it can actually see it. It's not down too low. So let's go ahead and do the default for the dense point clouds, and then we'll follow up with the mesh, and then we'll follow up with the texture. And once we get the texture, we'll look to see if we've got something decent. Okay, dense point cloud is done. Okay, looking pretty good. All right, and I'm gonna do the same thing. Just make a mesh. Next, default, yes, and let's go. And once that's done, we'll be back again and do that final texture and see what 30 meter looks like. And then there's just one more to go. Okay, the mesh is done. Great. I'm just going to go. Now you can see it's kind of doing some funny things out on the edges. Obviously didn't know what it wanted or needed here, but we're just going to go ahead and do that textured mesh. And general high details. Yes, that's what we want. And let's let it cook, and we'll be back in a bit. Okay, we're done. So let me hit finish on that one. So again, at 30 meters, it's looking pretty good. I don't see any major issues there. We get in here, and again, looking a little bit, blurry, if you want to call it that or whatever. So yeah, it's starting to sort of get worse and worse as we get higher and higher. But that's 30. So we just have one more, I think, that we're going to try. And that's going to be the 40 meters. So let me do another instance of Zephyr. And actually, I'm just going to press pause for a second because I think I better save my work. Otherwise, I may lose it all. So just give me a second. Okay, everything's saved. So I'm not at risk of losing anything here. So now I'm going to take the 40 meter images and I'm going to bring those in. And I'm going to repeat the process here and just fly through it. No sense in wasting your time. You've obviously seen this a few times already. So I'm just going to fly through these and then just get to the final product here little by little. Okay, that was pretty quick. I'm going to go finish. Let me go to the next, the dense point cloud. And let me do the default again. And I'm going to go ahead and get that cooking. Okay, dense point cloud is done. Great. And you can see getting a lot of building here now, because I'm just up much higher. So that's naturally going to happen. So no problem at all. But we are going to go into the meshing stage, use defaults here, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit run. Okay, mesh is done. Great. And now just to add that texture and see what we've got. And we're going to go with high details. Go ahead and hit run and let it cook for a couple minutes. Great, texture is done. So let's make a comparison here. I can see these targets out here. So let me go have a look at them. All right, so if I bring this up and sort of let this fill my screen, then you can obviously see that we're losing a lot of detail in this particular image. So let me go ahead and save this, and then what we'll do is maybe we'll flip through them and then just do some quick comparisons. Okay, so here is the quick comparison here. I could have sort of made a quad view or something like that, but I think this will get the point across nonetheless. This is at 10 meters. You can see the targets. You can make out the edges quite well, and even where they meet here at the center. Now, there is a little bit of warpage going on here, so I have to investigate that, but I think it just has to do with a little bit of the noise coming from this very plain white target. So I'll have a look at that. I might even be able to try some different settings to clean that up, but nonetheless, you can see it's not doing too bad. It's fairly crisp here. And if we switch over to 20 meters, not too bad, but again, now we're starting to lose a little bit of detail, but this shouldn't be a problem. If you had to pick this for a ground control point or something like that, I don't see this being that big of a deal. Next. Okay, now we're getting to 30. Again, you can still make out the center. It's not looking pretty, but still not too bad. You may be at risk of, picking a little bit to the left or right or diagonally, whatever the issue might be, by a centimeter or something like that. But now when we get into 40 meters, okay, now we're really starting to, have some issues here, but, still not too bad. I mean, you can make out the center of those two targets, these two checkered patterns, it's somewhere, let's say around here or whatever. So again, depending on what it is that you're doing, depending on, if it's a crash scene, a crime scene, if you're just doing general surveying, just want to get the lay of the land, so to speak, then, this might be perfectly acceptable. There is one thing that I didn't do, and I think I'm going to try it right now, but that is when you can bring in all the photos together. And of course, this is a technique that, you would typically try. And the reason is what you'd want to do is, fly high, gather a very big area. But if there's certain areas that you want to get in high detail, like maybe over here or something like that, then you fly down close, like get in close, get the angles that you want. If there's vehicles over here or whatever, some kind of evidence or whatever it might be, well, fly close, pick up a lot more photographs. Now, of course, when you do fly something like that, you want to do it gradually. So what you don't want to do is be far away and then all of a sudden, kind of like zoom in and you're like right at this point. And that's simply because it just can't figure out where you are. If I'm at the end of this white line, well, that could be this white line. It could be, this white line. It could, who knows what it could be. So typically when you do something like this, you start up high like this, take a few photos, move in, take a few more photos. Let's say I wanted to move into here, move in, take a few more photos, move in, few more photos, and eventually you can get really, really close. And so you have to take gradual steps to where you want to be, and it tends to just work really, really well if you do it that way. Okay, so let me do that. I'm gonna I'm gonna close these out actually, and then I'm gonna make another instance of Zephyr, or I'll fire up Zephyr again. And when I do that, oops, that's not what I wanted. Okay, what I'm gonna do is fire up Zephyr, and once I have that, I'll bring that in here like this. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna do every photo. So I've got the 40 in there, and then what I'm going to do is bring the 30. Where's my 30? 30 meter. Yep. 30 meters. Okay. Bring those in there. I'm going to bring in the 20. So there's going to be a lot of photos. So this is going to take me a little bit longer to process, but through the magic of video editing, you will not have to wait. I promise. So let me just go ahead. Next. And I'm going to use the same settings that I did before. So that was basically aerial. I'm going to use the default, go next and run. And I will be back in just a little bit. Okay, we're back, and it looks like we have 103 photos in total. And if I just scroll down here, I want to check to make sure. Yeah, looks like everything reconstructed, which is not surprising. I mean, if you look at the images and such, and actually you can see the flights here. So this is kind of nice to look at it this way. So these are all the camera positions that I took, all right, from the different heights. And so you can see that they're fairly accurate in terms of, being level here. I did push a couple of these down. They started to drift a little bit by a meter or so. So I just tried to keep them on the same level. So there you go. So that's 10, 20, 30, and 40. And because of the amount of texture that's in these images here, like you can see all the lines and the cracks that have been filled or whatever, it has quite a lot to use for the reconstruction. So it's probably not going to be an issue. But let's go ahead and do the dense point cloud. We'll just use the defaults like we did before and be back in a bit. All right, we have a dense point cloud. So let's just have a look. Not too bad, not too shabby at all. Great. Great. Okay. And I'm just going to continue on the process like we did before and get into that mesh. And there we go. I'm going to use the defaults and back one more time. And the last thing we're going to do is the texture. And I think that'll be it for today. Great. The mesh is done. And that's means that we have our final step, which is going to be the textured mesh. So I'm going to go there, fire that off, and that will be the last thing that we do here today. So let me hit run, and I'll be back when that's done. Okay, we made it. Finally, the last thing that we wanted. So now let's move in here and have a look to see what we've got. So I'm going to move in to any of these targets here, but now I can see there's some artifacts here. There's some funny stuff going on. I need to investigate that. Why it's doing that? That's interesting. But you'll see that the quality of the, if we look at just the resolution here, it's not that bad. And so those close-up images helped significantly. So if we were to compare this to just the 40-meter one, and in fact, let me do that. Let me bring up the 40-meter project here, and let's see what that gives us. We can make a quick comparison here. And go to the textured mesh. It's just in another monitor here, so I'll slide this in a second. So this is the 40. Let me bring up the textured mesh. You'll see this is what we've got, right? So at 40 meters, it looks like this, right? But of course, this is what we're getting with the mix of them all. So it's a much better, much crisper. So I think that makes the point, and that is that, if you're going to be doing a drone project, you should think about what kind of level of detail that you're going to need, what height you need to fly at, and don't forget to test your equipment. So if you have a drone and you have a fixed lens, like it's a DJI, like a Phantom 4 or whatever, then, it's always good to test. Take some targets, put them on the ground, or even if it's just, a natural feature that's on the ground, some of these cracks or corners, whatever it is, fly really, really, really low. I mean, we could have even done 5 meters, and that would probably have been even better. And then, go to 10, go to 20, and just start increasing the altitude and look at the difficulty you're going to have in trying to resolve some of these finer details that are in the model. And that can be really, really useful. Okay, folks, that's it for this episode of Click 3D. Thank you so much. If you made it this far, wow, well, I'm impressed. So have a great day, everyone, and hope to see you on the next one. Bye-bye.